Yo, what's up, y'all? Today we're gonna be learning how to make this track.
Við erum komnir fram hjá síðustu vísbendingu. Að liðinu og Magnís.
Herra minn, ertu búinn að gleyma að það eru skrýmsli á verði við hliðið sem...
Ég dræpi til skrýmsla til að...
Welcome to Scoring to Picture. This is a full breakdown, episode 1, where we're focusing on preparation and writing. So the first thing you want to be able to do is you want to focus on how you conceptualize the music for this picture. When you are conceptualizing, what we mean is to do this. Watch the film, scene or cue, one time. On the first time, record a voice note of your first initial ideas. This is super important. Don't worry about what makes sense just yet. Okay? Don't worry about what makes sense just yet. Just watch the film and then record your initial voice note based on the musical ideas you are getting as a response to watching the film the first time. After that, you want to again watch the film again and record a second pass of musical ideas. For example, if I'm watching this scene like this is what I would do, generally speaking.
Verði við hliðið sem...
Oh, that's a big important part.
Ég dræpi til skrýmsla til að ná í þjársjóðin sem lýst í þessari leiðabók. Alveg eins og ég dræpi.
Okay, so you get the point that I'm making. All right, so when you are recording your voice note, feel free to, record as many musical ideas as you want, but you only get 2 passes at this, okay? And the reason why you only get 2 is because the first set of ideas are probably actually going to be the ones you like the most in the end, because it's what speaks to you almost instinctually. And the reason why you have the second pass is because by the time you are now going into the second pass, you already remember some of the things that you liked about the first pass, and you're more likely to include those, which means already you have some good working ideas. And then you're more likely also to correct some of the things you did not like from the first pass in the second pass. By the time you were to get to the third pass, if you were to record a third pass, in my opinion, you're at this point just like prolonging the time that it takes to get to the writing process. Now we're on to the second step, which is what I call the technicalities. Okay. The technicalities involve watching the film again and going through essentially a spotting session for yourself. And in that spotting session, what you're doing is you're trying to determine where the music should enter or come out. And you also want to include specific descriptions of how you want the music to sound and how it should interact with the scene. The second thing is you want to record these thoughts in a marker track, which I tend to call or label hit points. You can call it whatever you want to call it, as long as it makes sense to you what you label that marker track as. Here's what I mean again. Keeping this here, we can see that I am including inside of this track, I'm including important details that I think are worthwhile. So that way, when I go back to actually write and record music, I am cognizant of these specific hit points. And hit points is just a fancy phrase that describes certain parts of a scene that you want the music to highlight. So a first example right here is where I have the first hit point, which is a low bell hits. Using low strings and brass, they're slowly building. Another one that I have is number 7, which is here, where at this point in the scene, the captain of the ship is like really angry. They're talking, they're having dialogue. And so I want to be cognizant of that. And so I left a marker telling myself, hey, I go back to a lower treatment. right? I go back to a lower treatment of whatever's going to be going on at this point, and I'm going to be focusing on underscoring. So just to finish up with that, ideally the 2 previously recorded voice notes and the hit point marker track should share many common components, making the next step much easier. So again, the voice notes that you made, the 2 of them, and this part should make the next step much easier. So let's talk about the next step. Step number 3 is what I call preparation. Simply put, you're going to use a marker track and the 2 voice notes to create a first draft time signature roadmap based on the voice notes, music, and the synced hit points. Okay, so here's what that looks like for me. Essentially what this is doing is you're trying your best to musically get your hit points to line up with the visuals. And so how do we do that? You can either alter the tempo, which in this case, I think for me pretty much stays consistent. In this case, the signature is ever changing, right? We have 4/4 time, 4/4 time, 4/4 time, then 6/4 time, right? And notice where these hit points are matching up. So 4/4 time, boom, short transition. Another 4/4 time, boom, theme B, lyrical strings and winds. And did I necessarily have to label 4/4 time twice technically to have been in 4/4 time this whole time? I technically didn't, but it just helps me again be mindful of what's coming and what's happening in that moment. Step number 4 is where we actually start to sketch and write and arrange our music for the picture. During this step, you are preparing your composition/arrangement by writing a draft of the music in a piano sketch using the following layers for tracks, which are melodies, counter melodies 1 through 3, main chords 1 through 2, and runs 1 through 2. Here are my tracks, and what you're seeing here are the sketch that I made. So you might be wondering, why do I use a piano sketch? There's actually a video that I already put it out a while back. I'll link that in the description right now, talking about why I like using a piano sketch. There are some things that I did not mention that I'll mention right now, which is that the sound of a piano in general is very, very flexible in that you can have long notes, you can have short notes, you can have trills, you can have tremolos, you can have fast runs, you can even record block chords. And so to me, essentially what a piano is able to do in terms of a piano sketch is it's able to give you a quick synopsis of what each instrument family will be able to do when it actually comes down to one of the later stages, which is orchestration. Also, just in terms of the nature of how the piano sound is made and expressed, it's more of a percussive instrument. And so for me, this is just my humble opinion, it's easier for me to really hear every element of my eventual score and then go back and correct anything that needs to be corrected or make any changes at this stage before going to orchestration. Another thing you want to do in this step is create a marker track that is labeled harmony, where you write out the chords or harmony for any given section of the music. So I'm going to show you what that looks like for me. Here we can see now our harmony track, right? And in this harmony track, we have certain things labeled. Sometimes it's what is the overall harmonic vibe for this section of music. So for example, here, the first one, to open up the scene, we have a C Phrygian modal kind of vibe. But then, later on, we have moments where, again, this is more like melody and chords. So we have C minor to B flat to G minor 7/4 to G. Let's go ahead now and listen to the actual piano sketch. Here we go. Okay, so there we have it, the piano sketch. Let's move on now. Step number 5. Step 5 is where we finally get to the orchestration component or the orchestration aspect. So what you simply do is you begin taking the MIDI data from your piano sketch and you start distributing it to various instruments, ensembles of the orchestra. Okay, but here's some things to keep in mind. You want to keep in mind things like instrument ranges, an instrument's tone or color, depending on where it sits inside of its range, limitations, dynamics, and orchestration techniques, as well as best practices, which kind of are the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and just plug in that if you are unsure of some orchestration techniques or instrumentation things, you can definitely go ahead and pick yourself up a book like The Study of Orchestration, and I'll link that as well. So that way you can basically have a guide that you have, on hand at all times when you're writing, so that way you can go ahead and ensure that you're hopefully writing idiomatic music, which is again a fancy word that basically just means you're writing music that makes sense to the instruments that you're writing for. So I have here an example of an orchestration technique or best practice, which is orchestral dovetailing, right? Which is basically where sometimes you write a line. It might be a long line. It could be even shorter line, but it tends to be a long line, a melodic line or a counter melody line, or even a fast run. And it kind of goes through either two scenarios. One, it starts from a high pitch to a low pitch, or it goes from a low pitch to a high pitch, and those set of pitches are outside of the scope of one instrument's range. And so what you would do is either keep it in terms of orchestral family, so you can focus on the woodwinds and have the contrabassoons playing the lower instruments, and then the bassoon, and then the clarinet, and then the you can go to the oboe, and then the flute, and then the piccolo, right? That's going from bottom to top. Or you could reverse that order, going top to bottom. Or you can even go inter orchestral families. So that would be like having the double basses and the cellos perhaps going through a line, right? And that might even be doubled with maybe I would say something like trombone, like a bass trombone. And then as it's going up, you have the violas, you have the clarinets, and you have the horns doing another line. And then you have after that, you might take the violin twos, and pair that with oboes, right? And then they have their part, and then violin ones, flutes / piccolos finish it off at the top. So that's what I mean by like having orchestration techniques already built into your orchestration when you start divvying out your piano sketch. So I want to go ahead and show y'all an example of what this looks like. Right here I have again in my piano sketch this line. I hope you remember it, but there was this one part where there was a run that took place. So here's this run. Take a listen again. Okay, so there's the run. Now let's go ahead and look at how I orchestrated that out. We're going to take a look at the strings and the strings and the woodwinds, especially the woodwinds here. And just keep in mind what instruments are being used, right? I have the bassoon, I have the solo clarinet, I have two flutes, the solo flute number 2. I have the piccolo as well on this dovetailing line, okay? So as you can see, the colors, the purple is the string instruments, and then the blues are the winds. And let's just take a look and listen to what this sounds like now. So there you have it, right? Pretty simple. But again, it just makes for the music to sound more realistic. And that's really what I wanted to kind of finish on right there, is that producing and orchestrating at the same time is one of the best things you could do. You can utilize idiomatic practices to make sure that you're mock-up, your orchestral mock-ups sound realistic. Another thing you can do is utilize panning carefully, so that way your panning, the way you're panning the instruments, really actually corresponds with some of the more traditional seating charts for an orchestra. So yeah, with that being said, this ends episode 1 of Scoring to Picture with a full breakdown, specifically focusing on preparation and writing. In our next video, we'll focus on more production mixing aspects to make the score come to life for the aspect of film scoring, because you would do things a little bit differently once it's all said and done to enhance the sound for a film score. Alright, you guys, thank you again for watching. If you like what you've seen here, please consider subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment for me if you have any questions or you just want to say this video was awesome. Alright, you guys, peace out.